This week on the New You Show, More Scarier Pt3 From Beyond. Humans are such easy prey. Hey everybody, welcome to New to You Show. It is a recommendation podcast where we recommend things to you and discuss them, different experiences, media, etc.
So hopefully it's stuff that you will hear this episode, you will hear what we're talking about and say, I'm going to go check that out.
Right, or
because these guys did a terrible job of explaining it, so I really got to know what the heck they're talking about.
Or I loved that when I saw it so many years ago. And I'd love to experience it again from a new light, from their perspective.
Especially now that I know it's so scary.
Yeah, more scary.
Yeah.
So, I have a pick this week. But before I get into it, let me tell you who I am. I am one of your hosts, John Holt. Keith, who are you?
I'm one of your other hosts, Keith. Vincent. Who are you, Julian?
I'm another host, Julian Cage. And how about you, Giaco? Who the heck are you?
I'm your very special guest, Giaco Farino. I'm here for week 3 of More Scarier.
Yeah, thanks for coming back
It's
3
great
weeks
to be
in
back.
a row.
Well, it's really nice of you all to put me up in a hotel for these 3 weeks, even though we all live in the same,
Yeah, well, I
appreciate
mean,
it.
it's just a courtesy,
Yeah.
We take this stuff seriously.
And it's pretty cheap because it's haunted.
Yeah.
Before we get into what's new to me this week, Giaco, what kind of Slipknot mask would you wear?
It's a great question. I would wear, my Slipknot mask would be like a dirty pig mask, but there would be like Frankenstein stitches across the head.
Yeah.
And
As if you made it out of real pig flesh.
Yeah. But also, the mouth would kind of be rotted away, so you could see my mouth, and I would be smiling.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
It's nice. Good twist.
I saw Slipknot live.
What?
Whoa.
On purpose?
They, yep,
right.
they were in a big festival, and Slayer played before them.
Wow.
Whoa.
They
Slayer
closed
open
the
for
night.
Slipknot.
Yep.
That. Wow.
So that's it.
Nice. So what would be new to you this week?
So my new thing is I just a little bit ago went to a museum that totally blew my mind, and I really loved it. I was doing some business up in Seattle, and I went to the EMP Museum, which it stands for
Electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah, they say it stands for the Experience Music Project Museum, but it's a music, really weird, but it's a music and pop culture museum, and it also holds the Science Fiction Hall of Fame as well.
Cool.
Oh, science fiction like writing Hall of Fame, or is it?
It's hard to tell.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
They were holding a
Kind of like this
special.
podcast.
Yeah.
Hard to describe.
Hard
Yep.
to describe. It's like a water cooler.
So here's my question:
Museum.
Is Gremlins in it?
Well, if they were, there'd be more and more of them.
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
a water. It rains in Seattle a lot.
They
And water
had
coolers.
they had a lot of different exhibits. And they had one that's particularly relevant is that they had a horror exhibit. Thank you, where John Landis, Eli Roth, and somebody else. Sorry, third person. You're probably amazing. Sort of curated this experience, and it was really nice. There were some old set pieces from movies and props and things, and that actually I get a real thrill out of that. I'm such a movie hound, and especially horror. To see things up close, it's really cool. Even stuff that I'm not crazy about, like there were props from Hostel, and it's like really weird to see those in real life, you know? But the really exciting thing was that there were these, like the whole display was mainly mini documentaries.
Oh, wow.
So there were these little stations, and there would be 2 movies per video that would play, and they would talk about the impact of it. And actually in the short time, 5 minutes per movie, really, really get to these interesting things that I hadn't even considered. And this is what I do. I love horror movies. I study horror movies a lot. And, it was everything from, yes, they talked about Hostel, but there was a room where they were talking about the original Wicker Man and Suspiria and the Ringu and a bunch of others.
Is the original Wicker Man the Nicolas Cage one?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's
No,
Okay.
no, it's the old Scottish one. It was like
Oh,
it
yeah.
takes place, yeah. So it was really fun, and there was a really great sci-fi. They had like a horror exhibit, a fantasy exhibit, which was fun. That was like a little more prop heavy and a little more not for kids, but it was like there were little passages that kids could run through, and it was talking about the archetypes of fantasy. And then there was a sci-fi one, which was actually amazing because that is just props from all different movies. If you are sort of like me and the type of person who does get a thrill out of seeing these physical things that were involved in amazing movies, I mean, they had the jacket that Zorro wears in Blade Runner, that like clear plastic thing, the original one. They had, I'm a huge fan of Dune, the movie, and they had some original models, and then they also had like the knife that Sting as Fade Ralta wields, and that like actually gave me goosebumps seeing that stuff because Dune, as a series of books, but also as a movie, really meant so much to me. It was really my.
Well, we got to have you come back to talk just about Dune.
Yes, I would love to talk about.
Maybe on
Dune.
one of the like sand topics.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, or like spice addiction.
Yeah.
if we talk about addiction, I'll come on and do Dune.
Or just a spice episode.
Yeah, all your favorite spices. John's like oregano.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I got sage, okay? So just fuck off.
Cool.
Do not try to get sage.
Melange.
What's your spice? Melange.
Melange.
And then Dune.
Yeah. And then Dune. So it was really amazing. And, the music stuff was really good, too. There was a thing about, because it's very specific, they've been around for a little bit, and they're so big that it's not just like the 60s. It was like Jimi Hendrix globally. Like, what was he wearing when he went around
Well,
the world?
he's from Seattle.
That makes sense.
So that might be their connection.
That's true. So that, because there was also, and I assume that this was the only Seattle connection. There was also a really amazing Nirvana thing that was actually the roots of Nirvana, and it was focusing on the burgeoning punk scene around the world that specifically influenced Nirvana. So it wasn't what you normally see. There were some cool smashed old guitars and drum kits and things like that, but it was like, no, stand here and look at this map and put these headphones on and listen to, a few curated Butthole Surfer songs, and a few curated Buzzcock songs and stuff like that.
Cool.
So it was really cool. So I highly recommend that. That is have any of you ever been to that museum?
No,
No,
I've never been to Seattle.
same here.
I've been to the
Very
airport.
Cool. Yeah.
I've seen So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Yeah, then
lots
you know.
of times I've
Yeah.
seen it.
Then you know everything you need to know.
Yeah.
And singles.
I've used Windows.
Oh, yeah.
That's as close to Seattle as I've got. Oh, and I've been to a Starbucks.
Oh,
Cool. Yeah, I didn't go to the original Starbucks.
I heard she's an angel or something. Like, I don't know how that all worked out, but
I have no idea. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. You're
Oh boy, he's yeah.
Battlestar.
Battlestar.
But that was not the
Oh.
original, though. That's the remake.
right.
Yeah.
Was Starbuck mouth? Or no, Starbuck
Yeah.
was in
He was face.
face. That's right.
Yeah.
Not mouth from Goonies.
So at the beginning of the A Team, they actually spoofed that. At the beginning, they show Benedict.
Cumberbatch.
No, his name is
Face.
something. Benedict is his name, and like during his title shot, they show him looking he's in some theme park and a Cylon walks by, and he's like, "What?" in the opening of the A Team, they lampoon his
earlier career.
his already famous role.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, so if you're from Seattle and you haven't been there, or if you're heading there for work or play, that's a creepy way to say it, you should visit this museum. It's really awesome. It's right across from the Space Needle. I didn't go up the Space Needle because I spent all my time at the EMP museum.
How big is this? I mean, it sounds
Pretty
really
big. It's like
to have
3
all that stuff.
stories,
Wow.
and it's, it's not like here on the East Coast. They got space.
Yeah.
They can stretch out.
Got space for days.
Yeah. And it's a very cool design on the outside, and I bought
Cool.
some cool magnets.
Ooh, awesome. Very good. Thanks,
Yeah.
Giaco, for
Oh,
sharing
yeah,
that.
of course.
So now
What did you do?
we'll go into my thing.
What
Oh
did
yeah,
you do?
John Holt's bringing something
Yeah.
to the table.
What
All right.
did you do?
So, what have I done?
Every journey begins in the mind. A flight of imagination. A vision of what might lie across the universe. Or within the deepest regions of the subconscious. Dr. Edward Pretorius.
All right, so my pick is Stuart Gordon, the director, his film from 1986, From Beyond. So this is 2 years after like the Orwellian dystopia that we all live in started.
Mm-hmm.
So, before, I think we were at the time at war with Eurasia
Right.
or something, right? And now we're at war with Pacifica.
It's also the year I was born. So
Well, there you go. It's From Beyond. It's basically like a full moon movie. So the producer was Charles Band. He had run this company called Empire Pictures. They actually, due to some tax issues, had access to this giant soundstage in Italy that the government had taken from whoever had built it before because they hadn't paid their taxes. So Empire had access to it. So on the cheap, they went out and shot this movie From Beyond out there. This was Gordon's second film. His first film before this was Re-Animator, which was based on another H.P. Lovecraft tale called...
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yep, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, another kind of like mad scientist gone crazy kind of tale. This movie, From Beyond, is from a tale called From Beyond by H.P. Lovecraft.
Well, hold on. I don't want to derail you, but I don't think you really explained what full moon pictures are.
Oh, I'll get into that.
Yeah,
I'll get
okay,
into like
good.
that back end stuff. Stuart Gordon was a stage director. He's one of the founders of Organic Theater Company in like 1970, which is one of the like premier Chicago theater companies. They were the ones, and he actually worked with David Mamet to revise his second play, and that's what sort of pushed David Mamet more into the spotlight.
Wow.
So he was part of this burgeoning, very, very strong stage and acting scene. He was directing a lot of plays and writing a lot of plays. He actually got kicked out of university for staging a subversive Peter Pan. And then he got kicked out of university for that. And from there, he just kind of kept going, kept making these things, kept working on plays. And so he gets into his first movie, which was Re-Animator. A big Lovecraft fan, loved making movies and telling stories about Lovecraft. And again, using it as subversive tale telling. He liked getting into twisting people and playing with like what horrifies them and what affects them as characters. And what was really great, the movies are like effects, like craziness and really kind of weird, fun horror, but he really gets everything he can out of his actors and really does a lot with them. Even, a lot of them are stage actors that he had been working with before, and some of them are kind of hammy, but it's just the right, like he strikes just the right tone and just the right balance so that they aren't as schlocky as some of the same movies of the time and of the budget. This movie was made for like 2.5 million, could have been made for 4.5. A lot of the people he cast, like Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs, who are the male and female protagonists, were in Re-Animator. So he was playing with this idea that he's going to make movies with a sort of moving cast. Roger Corman did a similar thing when he was making movies. Yeah, he was kind of working with an Italian crew out in Italy, making this thing on the cheap. Very small cast. Like really, you have Jeffrey Combs, who plays Crawford Tillinghast, which is the name of the main bad guy in the H.P. Lovecraft tale. There's sort of an unnamed narrator, first-person story in the Lovecraft tale, and Crawford Tillinghast is the one who's turning on this device and becoming more and more freakish and hunched over. And Barbara Crampton plays Catherine McMichaels, who she was before this. She was in Body Double with Melanie Griffith, Melanie Griffith, right? And she just kind of went on to become a pretty big scream queen. Did a lot of B stuff and is, I think, beloved in the horror world. There was a guy, Ken Faree. He plays Detective Bubba Brownlee. He's awesome in this. He was actually the dad of Keenan in Keenan and Kel later on, and Kyra and Keenan, right? And he was also in Dawn of the Dead.
That's what I was
He
gonna
was
say.
one of the
Yeah.
SWAT officers. He stays around for a long time in Dawn of the Dead. He's great. He's the one who kind of quotes, when hell is full, the dead will walk the earth. That's one of his things. And he takes a lot of pot shots at Savini and stuff. So very fun. Then Ted Sorrell is the other sort of big name. He plays the real villain in this, Dr. Edward Pretorius. Sorrell was a stage actor. He did some TV stuff and a few like movies here and there, but for the most part, he was a stage guy. But his character name Pretorius is a Bride of Frankenstein reference because the mad doctor in that is Dr. Pretorius. So that's kind of
It's not Frankenstein?
No. Well, it's the Bride of Frankenstein. It's made by Dr. Pretorius.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Or maybe it's one of the doctors, but it was a little reference, a little nod to the old horror.
The old Universal.
So the story is that you have, and this is true to the Lovecraft one for the most part too. The initial thing is that there is a world around our world, parallel to our world, that we can't fully see.
It's not parallel. It's here.
It's here all around us.
It's vibrating at a different wavelength.
Right. So we can't see it, we can't feel it, but based on
really interact with it.
Based on Lovecraft's idea is that we used to be able to, and by basically, and this is again Lovecraft's miscegenation kind of thing, by devolving yourself into this like hunched monstrous creature, like you'll start to gain the organ perceptions that you used to have. And he actually used pineal gland in his tale, but that was an older idea that the pineal gland had some sort of like sixth sense notion. So you have this mad doctor who's trying to turn on a device that will stimulate and activate their senses so that they can perceive another world and perceive another reality and possibly expand themselves. And what this does is that they can see the stuff, they can see the creatures flying around, they can see these other beings, but that means those beings can see them, and now they can interact with each other. So you can see the monsters, and they can see you, and that's the big sort of the problem, the horror of this whole thing. Now in this tale, what happens is it goes right out the gate. Boom, turn on the device. They've been working up, it works. See the crazy stuff.
We don't see them ever like going through the process of learning how to build this thing. It's just like it's already built.
Yeah, they're already in the last stages of experimentation. He turns it on and it works all too well, and like he gets bit on the face by this snake thing or whatever. And then his Pretorius, the big bad doctor, this is Crawford Tillinghast. Pretorius comes up and is like, "Oh, it's awesome, it works," and something comes and gets him and kills him. And so now Crawford Tillinghast, who's kind of the hero, runs away and is locked up for having killed Dr. Pretorius. And that's sort of the beginning of the movie.
It just looks like to the authorities that he
killed him.
Killed him.
Well, they're kind of like, we don't know how he twisted off his head.
Right.
But he certainly did. And in fact, I'll get a little bit of a Lovecraft story, and I'll kind of stop on this one. What is the villain in that one was Crawford Tillinghast. And what he had been doing was feeding his servants to the other creatures in this other world as experiments. And so when the reader, when the author, whatever, the person telling you this tale, what happens,
narrator,
when things kind of go awry and it's near the end, the authorities descend and he's arrested for, even though they're all missing, they can't find bodies, he's arrested for having somehow killed these people. He's like, they're gone, you're the last one there, you must have killed them. And so he's arrested. And so that's kind of, they've switched things around. So now Tillinghast is the reader, is you, and now he is in that position. He's put in an asylum, and that's where Barbara Crampton comes in, and she's like, well, I'm going to prove that he's not crazy, and we're going to go back to this house, or I will prove he's crazy, but I'm going to run these experiments. I'm more a behavioral psychologist than a drug and medicine psychologist. I don't know. It's very weird.
Well, in the movie, she's a brain specialist.
Right. So it's more about like the physiology of the psychology and psychological issues. So she takes him back, and he's crazy at this point. He does not want to deal with it, but he's kind of like sensible crazy. Like he
wants to prove that he's innocent.
Right. But he also doesn't want to deal with this thing. He doesn't want them to turn it on.
He doesn't want to go back. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the last thing he wants is for anyone to turn on this machine.
Yeah, he wants to be destroyed.
So at this point, they have a chaperone in Detective Bubba Brownlee, Ken
A
Fareed.
big old police officer.
Yeah, and so he's really great too. They get up there, they turn it on, it starts to like stimulate their pineal glands, and they start to get like hypersexualized, which is also something I can talk about this in a moment. But anyway, they get hypersexualized, and it just descends from there. Like they start to see the stuff, they have to fight the stuff. Pretorius isn't totally dead. He's been like absorbed into this monster, and his mind is part of it, and it's super crazy and weird. There's a lot of like fleshy effects. Like Gordon said, he got an R rating from the MPAA after like a whole ordeal where he like gave them an initial cut that had 10 times too much of everything. That's his quote. And he ultimately like made some small trims without removing like an entire sequence. So he got it down pretty good. Pretty like weird. There's some like sexual stuff in there, like with
A little bit of fetish stuff.
yeah, like BDSM and really like really funky stuff. There's like the point where chilling gas is turned into this monster through time, through exposure, and starts to act monsterly and sort of
I figured he was turned into because the thing was stuck on his head for so long. He was stuck inside the creature for so long that when they flipped back, he had no hair.
Well, no, I think he was being digested by the thing, so it had dissolved his hair and started to dissolve his. That's why he was like really tender to the touch. So he was being dissolved. He had already, because his pineal gland had already like protruded, and he had already like, that was when he got to his full transformation, and that gave him the hunger to see. He saw big purple brains and stuff. But the dialogue is very fun and tongue in cheek. There's a lot of cross-cut where you'd be like, Brownlee would like puke, and then you cut to like her like breaking an egg or something, and it like pouring down. Just a lot of fun. Like, it's a very fun movie. It's got some good like horrific things and a lot of body horror weirdness and like weird stuff happening, and it's all very well lit. Like it's not a dark movie. It's all present and very like well staged, and it's very stagey too. Like it's very like simple set pieces. Very like, this is the set, these are the characters interacting within it, this is all happening. Yeah. So a couple little like tidbits. The effects were by John Carl Buechler. He did Dungeon Master in 84 and Troll in 86. Those are kind of the two big ones you know him from. This movie still does pretty good. It's Rotten Tomatoes got about 71% average, and it's stayed pretty steady there. For this tenor of movie, again, so Full Moon's production is what Charles Band created after he sort of came back from Italy to the States. He kind of folded Empire and started Full Moon, and it went through a few different names like Full Moon Media and all this stuff. And they're the ones who make like Leprechaun and Jack Frost, not the Michael Keaton one.
They made the Puppet Master movies.
He was he was
Subspecies movies.
And I think
a Pit and the Pendulum version.
Band may have
Pendulum.
directed or written. Like he had a bigger hand in some of the Puppet Master stuff. Like he had a pretty big hand in a lot of this. So there's a lot going on. Another little tidbit: Brian Yuzna was one of the writers. He was also the writer-producer on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah,
and some other horror stuff. So a lot of like fun little bits. So yeah,
he directed a couple in the Full Moon movies.
Yeah,
he did the Pit and the Pendulum, which I actually I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being pretty good.
He's pretty well regarded in the horror community as one of the big pillars of this type. It's like him and Don Coscarelli, who directed all the Phantasm movies, I feel like are held at the same level of director. Not superstar, but also not like making,
like schlock masters.
Not like a Sharknado 7 guy,
There's one sort of controversy with a lot of Lovecraft stuff is they like their Victorian sensibility to their Lovecraft, and this is both in Re-Animator and in this. These are probably the two best Lovecraft envisionings into film that you'll get. Like Carpenter's done some, Gordon's done some other ones, like he's directed some other shorts and stuff for it. But Re-Animator is probably the best. And in terms of like one of the monsters from outside space, because Re-Animator it's a kind of a zombie like thing, undead monsters, more like Return of the Living Dead kind of stuff. From Beyond is like getting into your extra dimensional horror kind of stuff, and this is probably
also like Lovecraft too. Sorry to interrupt, but it's you're only seeing the tip of it.
Right.
There's so much more terrifying stuff out there, but this is like this is only what you see in this one house when you flip this thing on.
And in terms of like the the story originally written is not it's not very well written. It's a very early Lovecraft story as well. Like 1920 is pretty early on.
Right.
So it's not a well-regarded story, but he does a really good job of it in the genre that he's working in. And it's probably, again, like people get too stuffy. They aren't having as much fun as they should with this kind of pulp. And I think Stuart Gordon really nails it. He nails the comedy without getting too slapsticky. He doesn't get too Sam Raimi with stuff. But he does play with some of Sam Raimi's like camera stuff. You see it in like when the woman's running down the stairs. And it's just he hits like a good tone that I think is just right for some of this stuff where you can have a good time watching it. The closest maybe parallel might be like Dead Alive, or something like a Peter Jackson type thing.
He's sort of like a cheerful Cronenberg because he's so body focused, but it's really it's so tongue in cheek sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, I did think of Cronenberg a lot with the what did you call them? The glands,
pineal gland,
pineal. They actually say it both ways in the thing. And there's some great quotes. I'll do these quotes from him, and then I'll kind of throw it out to you guys. One quote he has is, "Horror and sex go hand in hand. I think the two are life and death." That's a quote from him. And then another's, there are always people who think that horror movies are just kind of one half step away from porno to begin with. So that's sort of in the same vein.
Yeah.
And then this is a great one. I always say that fine acting is the best special effect. If you have a good actor, they can make you believe anything. My movies have always been about the casts, really. And I think that's really important since, like, the effects, they may have run out of budget near the end, and, like, the final set piece is kind of weird and, like, underwhelming in a strange way, even though it's, like, kind of cool and weird. Like, these two skeletons, like, fighting each other in this pile of flesh. You see a lot of, like, horror, like, body horror, gruesome people drawing on those ideas. And he actually spoke to, like, in a quote, like, to the Lovecraft purists. He kind of says, like, those purists are very upset with me because I've always thrown all this nudity into these movies, and there's no nudity in Lovecraft. But my argument is that there's a tremendous sexuality about Lovecraft and fear of sex, taking the reproductive act and turning it into something monstrous. Although he doesn't get explicit with it, he'll refer to it constantly in his stories, and in a movie you have to use images to show things. So he's kind of saying, you know,
it's just
there,
not
but
described.
It's this, like, it's another horror on the edge is what just like for Lovecraft, anything that wasn't of a certain pure Anglo stock was monstrous and strange.
Right.
Anything that's outside of his weird perception of sexuality and even what he was dealing with was not normal, is strange. And so you know, that's this guy saying, look, this is there, and you need the weirdness of it, and how, like, he portrays sex weird, like having in Re-Animator a disembodied head being held by its own, like, headless body, forcing itself to go down on a girl. It's a weird thing. And, like, this guy extending these slimy fingers to, like, caress a woman, very strange. And also he kind of brings it to the same time, like, there's this BDSM thing, and that's like a weird, it's outside the norm. And I think he plays with that a lot.
I think he used that too to, like, because you first see that stuff, they're like tapes of the evil doctors,
right?
That he was into that, so it's to kind of also show that he was, before he even became like an interdimensional being, he was already like kind of a twisted creep.
And we're not saying on this podcast that if you're into kink, you're twisted.
No,
we're
but
just
I think
saying that's what they're trying to say at this time with this movie. Yeah,
exactly.
And they hint. I don't know if they hint, or maybe I read it in a strange way, but I got the impression that he was into BDSM in a way that was not, like, consensual.
Yeah.
He's
a sadist.
He's more into the pain end of it.
Yeah.
Well, they say why in the thing. He said that he was impotent. You know, his assistant guy, whose name I'm forgetting, the main character,
Crawford Tillinghast,
says to him, like,
I love the name.
They'll know your secret, that you are impotent and that you could never have sex with a woman or something like that. Or that was an exchange in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, he uses it to taunt him to get closer to the finale, or one of the finales. It's sort of an interesting, like, spike.
Yeah.
There are a few different battles.
Right. In fact, that's one of the things I dislike about the pacing a little bit. Well, not the pacing. I just think it's weird in stories like that where it's just like, somehow it gets turned on again. Yeah. Like this, it's really easy to avoid ever having to deal with this thing. but sometimes it
just turns itself on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, it starts with a bang, and it does have a pretty furious pace. Like, it doesn't really let up. Like,
Right.
I mean, I would say that's maybe a downside. Like, I wish there were a few more slower paced scenes to kind of.
You didn't think the breakfast scene where she's talking about switching the machine back on, you didn't think that was a little breather?
Well, no, but
It'll shatter your mind as he throws the cup on the ground.
it's just very strange pacing, I guess, overall. But it was also like the weird version I watched. I watched a free version on YouTube that was like.
Me too.
Me too.
Okay, so we all watched this weird YouTube version.
I watched it on Blu-ray.
It must have been at 1.25 speed or something.
It's like at this different, and some scenes were faster than others.
Yeah.
Where it almost looked like
variable
comedic.
speed.
And then the sound was processed strangely, and the picture was cropped heavily.
They punched in on the
So that there were like entire shots where people's heads were cut off and stuff. So it made the film even stranger, and I think some of that timing stuff got messed up by that.
Too.
Yeah. It added another weird quality.
Well, like the
to it.
runtime on this YouTube version
only an
is
hour.
an hour 2 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, how long is the
Hour
regular?
30.
Oh,
It's
wow.
It's a 90-minute.
Yeah, so it's quite a bit.
It's a tight 90. I saw it originally. We picked it off the wall at a Blockbuster, like you see most full moon movies back in the 90s. But you know, we had watched Re-Animator, huge fans of
You
that.
had seen Re-Animator before seeing this?
Yeah. Cool. And then we grabbed
I
from
feel
Beyond.
like I for sure saw Re-Animator on like USA Up All Night or something at some point.
Maybe.
Yeah, I saw it on video.
It's
I'd
pretty.
never seen this. I'd never even heard of this.
I'd caught part of this on TV, and like just the beginning part where they first turn on the machine and you see the weird creepy thing, and it made an impression on me because I was like, oh. Like that idea of like, you know, things that are all around you but you just don't see them but they're there, like kind of creeped me out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna watch something else.
Yeah, I don't want to think of these floating around snake leech things being there all the time. I will say that the actor Jeffrey Combs, you said his name is great.
He's really
he's
good.
got this weird and I love him. I'm familiar with him from the movie Frighteners, which I think is an underrated movie that I really love. But he is great in Frighteners, and he's great in this. But
he's great in
but
Deep Space Nine too.
He's a very over the top. Everything is like dialed to 11 with him in all the roles that I've ever seen him in. He reminds me very much of the guy from Dead Alive, that actor from Dead Alive. Yeah. They have a similar quality. But to me, he was the gem in this whole movie.
Yeah, one of the best quotes is he bit off his head like a gingerbread man. he has this, because in Re-Animator he's like crazy-eyed a little bit because he's a fanatic, but he's much more reserved in his tone and his like mannerisms.
Yeah, right.
And he's deliberate though, and in this he's deliberate again, and he's another scientist, but he's messed up.
He's unhinged because he starts off that he got messed up from being in this other dimension,
and then he becomes David Bowie and the man who fell from Earth eventually.
I really liked the structure of this because I feel like as this movie is really, really wild until the part where he gets his pineal gland enlarged and
broken through his
skull, and then the movie just loses its mind and goes like and I really like that feeling, and that's something really hard to do in movies, and maybe not always even the right move in my opinion in horror movies, but it works for this type of movie where it's like when you're running so fast that you lose balance and you fall, and that's what this feels like. It's like you just run so fast that you completely lose control of your own motor skills and just fall on your face, and that's like what this does, and that whole process of falling is like the last 25 minutes of this movie. I liked it a lot. I don't want to give the impression that I'm saying this is a great movie, so that's something I want to put out there. I do want to say this is a really fun movie to watch with friends, like as like a schlocky horror film kind of thing.
Or alone on the subway.
Oh yeah, Jules? Speaking from experience, eh? And it's not a bad movie. It's just a I never felt scared or spooked. That's the thing about this era of movies, and really the full moon movies are have mastered this thing where it's like it's a scary movie, but you're never really scared or titillated.
Maybe a little grossed out sometimes.
Maybe.
A little
Well,
bit.
I mean, I feel bad for the actress, but
Yeah.
but
I know that outfit, man. Whew.
but that's what I want people out there listening to this to know, that we're not saying that, because we just talked about.
It's a great B movie.
Yeah,
I would argue,
but even
that
but I don't think it's even a great B movie.
It's a
No,
C
because
movie.
No.
I think
Texas
you're wrong on
Chainsaw
that.
Massacre is a fantastic B movie. Like the pacing, there's a lot of clumsy stuff in this, I think.
I think like for
but
a
I'm-
cult picture, it's got. I think the real horror in it is what happens to Tillinghast over the course of it.
Right.
Like his descent. Like he has no agency in this picture at all. He is beholden to
The circumstances.
Pretorius. He's beholden to the
doctor.
strong woman who comes in, and then he's beholden to his own base instincts when he's transformed. And it's not until the end that he gains his agency. And so what you're watching, like, really, it's a descent into madness for this one character. And that's, for me, like, you strip away a lot of the, like, effects and all that stuff. And it's, like, you focus on him throughout the picture. And that's, like, that, for me, is the horrific arc. That you're watching this person who, for anything he tries to do, cannot escape
He's
this
not in
spiral.
any control of his life.
Right. And he's just crushed under the weight of this inevitability.
But I would say that, like, okay,
I think it's a great movie.
So
But at the same time,
that art,
it's very hard. But at the same time, it's very hard to take any of it seriously.
right, and along those same lines, if you want that kind of arc, I think that there's you can go watch They Live. It's kind of similar in that you see this guy kind of lose control of be swept up in this whirlwind of a thing, and kind of the only time he takes agencies at the end. You know what I mean? I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm not saying don't watch this movie, but I'm also saying, hey man, when you watch this movie, kind of know what you're getting into.
I don't know.
I
Go
think
into
if
it
you just
blind
look
and have
at the
fun.
cover, you know what you're getting into. I mean, damn.
The movie's really fun. It's like you can just sit there and it's a good
You can just
chuckle
sit
away
there.
horror.
Right.
It's like it's sort of like your Hammer film with more violence and blood, and it's existential crisis.
And,
Yeah.
and it's also like just weird enough that that even though it's schlocky, it still like is very surprising because it doesn't adopt any standard conventions or anything. Like from one scene to the next, you have no idea what is going to happen, and it's very strange.
But it treats its characters. The characters are intelligent in terms of like how the director deals with them, and the cuts are just really fun. Like there's just a lot of
right.
fun stuff to find in there, and it barrels forward. It's just such a like watching it on my own and just sitting there chuckling to myself the whole time.
It's
Like,
very playful.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would have fun making something like that.
Yeah, totally.
I think every child should watch this movie. Everyone should
As
see
a
it.
part of like sex ed, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
This is abstinence ed. That's what they'll show you.
Would you show this to Felix?
No,
Never?
no.
Not even like
No. Well, I mean,
once he's 12?
I think
No,
Uncle John and Uncle Jules will have to show.
at some point, I would watch this movie, but in a marathon with like 4 other movies. I honestly didn't find this movie to be that engaging to me. I don't know what it is. It just seemed. I mean, I guess it was just reading that book recently and going over all those just masterpieces, and then I watched this movie and I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. It did something about the atmosphere. It never really took the time to give you this atmosphere.
Yeah.
And when
I would-
switched on the machine, I never felt like that was like I mean, when they switched on this machine that's supposed to open your eyes to this whole different dimension that's around us, they just kind of flipped on a purple light, and that's that. And then there's just a couple of like flesh socks floating around.
I think it's a question.
And I'm not. This isn't. This,
I would give it a chance with
I love
the non-weird
crappy movies.
YouTube
Yes.
version too.
I love crappy movies, and this is right there. But I just don't want people to get the. I don't want people to get the idea that we're like saying this is a quality film.
It's a well-made, creepy, weird movie.
It's a creepy, weird movie. It is not well made.
I think it's lovingly made. It's
Yeah.
again one of the best.
You think
One
it's
of the
lovingly made?
Oh, definitely.
I would agree with that totally.
Like,
Yeah.
there's
No
just
way. There's
because
no.
the
They
frames
don't even respect this. There's
They're-
no respect
for what?
for anything. Like the director is not respecting any mood or any
No, but
like.
see,
there's
I'm,
no
I'm
mood
gonna take
in it.
I'm gonna take some exception to that because the framing is very deliberate, and there are certain moments of tension for the characters and pauses that he does. There are certain things. It's a very spare sets for the most part, and everything that's in frame is deliberate.
And a very tiny cast most
Yeah.
of the time.
And
So
so
when I
and
saw
so-
the cast in the credits, I was like, oh yeah, there are only
Right,
6
like
people
really,
in this movie.
like the again, it's a 4-person ensemble, and then you've got some randos in the hospital, including the director's wife, who's the one who gets
Oh,
her
wow.
brain sucked out the
Oh,
first
yeah.
time.
Through her eye.
Yeah, Dr. Block.
That was a great scene.
So Dr. Block plays Stuart Gordon's wife. But then you have like some of those old people at the end, and that's kind of it. Like that's those 4, and then some tertiary or something.
Oh, the
Right.
crazy old people, the people who have lost their minds at the end, or they're
No, no, no.
babbling, or
No, they're
No, the neighbors.
the
Basically
neighbors show
standing
up
around
after the
house.
explosion, and they're like, "What's going on?" Oh, that's something funny too. So it's 666 Benevolent Street. Is it is the address? But in Lovecraft's story, the house Tillinghast house is on Benevolent Street.
Oh.
But so it's an odd. But then the 666
And
was
he's a teacher at Miskatonic. which is
Miskatonic
like, yeah.
University, and that's a big Lovecraft thing. But like in the sex dungeon, there's just sort of these odd paintings and like mirrors in weird places, and there's something, I don't know. I would push people to not watch it on the YouTube version because
Right.
there are some like tonal things that are happening. There are pauses that I don't know. I will have to watch the weird one and see.
So
I will
working-
have to say that I don't think it's a great movie, but when I think of it fondly. Like what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
that's how
and
I feel.
And it puts a smile on my face.
No, that's how I feel. But I'm just saying, don't think that I'm saying this is good. I'm just saying, it's like a guilty pleasure for me.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel guilty about it.
I guess what I'm saying is
Oh yeah, you didn't feel guilty when you were riding the subway? Did you feel guilty enough to be like, I'm just gonna watch this on the subway and I don't care if people look over my shoulder?
no,
I bet you didn't.
There was just this one scene that I was like, oh, maybe other people would be upset that I'm watching this.
I'd say like if you want to go watch a Lovecraft story movie, this and Re-Animator are the ones.
Yeah.
But I would say don't do that unless you've already read some Lovecraft, because to me, like, this doesn't feel, when I watch these movies, they don't feel the way I feel when I read Lovecraft.
Well,
See,
this
I
is-
disagree
and
on
I'm
this
not-
for this story and for Dexter Ward. It's a little like
I
they're-
think
'cause
I haven't
seeing,
read-
but I feel like seeing all this stuff visually, like, he writes in this non-specific, alluding kind of
Yeah.
way that lets your imagination come up with something scary, whereas this shows you something schlocky and is therefore not scary.
right.
Well-
But
well,
the
this is what
schlockiness
I was
so
gonna-
weird that
It is really weird
that
and
it's like-
neatly conceived too. Like
Yeah.
some of the weird like creatures are really interesting.
and
But
it's some of the stuff that isn't shot as cleanly and clearly.
But
There's-
what I would
that's where
s-
shadows come into play.
what I would say with this is what I think. I haven't read this Lovecraft story, but I have read some Lovecraft stories, and I feel like there's a lot more atmosphere to them. There's like a doom and a dread that this doesn't contain. And by all means, I'm not saying don't watch this movie. I'm just saying know what you're getting into.
I just feel like if this is the best adaptation of Lovecraft, that's kind of sad. That's all I'm saying. Like, it may be,
It's
but
the second best next to Re-Animator.
I think Alien is the best Lovecraft movie ever made.
Oh, I don't think that's a Lovecraft movie.
Yeah.
No.
Did you read the chapter in the book?
Yeah, but I think it's lovingly inspired by. But
Oh, certainly. Well,
Right,
it's not a
but
direct.
But
All right,
I
I would-
agree with
I
him.
would-
I feel like Alien
I
feels
think-
more like Lovecraft
I
to me
think
than this.
the
Yeah.
Thing is probably your best interpretation, like
The Thing is
because like it's Beyond the Mountains of Madness is kind of what the Thing is, like
Right.
that Arctic. It's the Arctic exploration horror trope is sort of
Which I think we need to bring back. Like There's not enough of that.
Yeah, there's a good X-Files episode.
I think there
of
are
that.
plenty of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ice.
I've had enough
Ice
of those.
is good.
But when you're talking about this,
We need tropical now.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'm
Because,
on it.
global warming and all
Right.
that. It's very topical.
That's very topical.
Well, like that anthrax in
gonna
Russia.
be
Did you guys hear
100
about that?
No.
So there's
what?
so anthrax doesn't die. Like basically to get rid of anthrax, what you need to do is like spray a place with antibodies to kill the anthrax, like to find like bacteria that will eat it or whatever. But so what happens is like these, there are deer up in Siberia or whatever that have died of anthrax and frozen and been covered in permafrost. But now that's
melting.
melting.
dude.
And so now there's anthrax like spreading through the population of reindeer or whatever is up there in what should normally be frozen northern Russia.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's
So
bad.
Zika from the south,
Anthrax.
anthrax from the north, and in the middle.
Trump.
It's more scarier. See?
Where can people get From Beyond?
So
John.
From Beyond is available on Blu-ray and DVD combo pack in my home library.
Mm-hmm.
It's also
So come on
available. It's also available on Amazon streaming. It's not actually on iTunes streaming. So it's on Amazon streaming. You have to purchase it. I think it's a rental or a purchase, or you can purchase it on.
This is a Scream Factory release. They put out
Oh.
so many great
Yeah,
things.
Or
through-
you can
with
watch-
Shout, right? Because
And you
that's
can
part
also-
of
Scream
Shout.
with Shout.
And
Yeah.
you can also watch this really weird, crappy version on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right. Hey,
I
hold
would not
the,
recommend that.
on Amazon.
Unless you're short on time, you'll shave off.
if you're an
25
Amazon
minutes.
Prime user, can you stream it?
No.
Okay,
You have to purchase. It's not one of
You
their free
buy
streaming.
you
have to
buy the
purchase
digital
it.
download.
Correct.
Okay.
See, this is the kind of movie that I'm like, why the hell isn't this on Netflix? Like, how much
Yeah.
would it cost
Yeah.
Netflix to put this movie in their library?
No. How much should they pay Netflix to put this in their library?
I know, I'm serious. It's like,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Right. Netflix is a little funny about this type of horror. I don't think there's enough. Like,
Well, that's a question.
Well, and I feel like they've kind of
Well-
they used to put
Do you
more
think-
money into like having just a bunch of movies, and
Right.
now they're taking that money and spending it on making their fancy shows.
which is
we
good.
talked about it before, but there's a streaming service just for horror, and I don't remember the name.
Shudder.
Shudder. That's
Yeah.
it. Do you think? I wonder if it might be on Shudder. That's a question mark.
Is that like
Yeah.
Shudder.com?
SUDDER.
Yeah.
But that's a possibility.
Wait,
It may be on the
SU or SHU?
SHU.
SU
Okay.
Sutter.
Sutter Home.
SutterHomes.com. So yeah,
It's now by Sundance now, so it's like related to Sundance
Interesting.
somehow. Channel maybe.
So, but they curate horror, and I think they're supposed to have a good catalog. I don't know how much of this Full Moon stuff they have on catalog. I mean, there's enough Full Moon that Full Moon could probably have their own streaming service if they wanted to.
Well, you think that, but there weren't as many as you remember. That
Really?
of the Full Moon stuff, there was there were a couple of titles and a couple of sequels. I would say there was probably under 20.
No.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna look that up real quick while she looks at that thing. Full
Yeah,
Moon.
because there was only 2 subspecies movies. There were like 6 Puppet Master movies.
Did they do the like Gingerbread Man?
I don't know.
Or
that
like
one.
the I guess Evil Bong is a little new.
Well, why don't we wrap up this episode? And
Yeah.
We'll look this stuff up afterwards. How about that?
From Beyond is not on Shudder.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
Gotta buy it.
Weird.
I mean,
Or
basically in their notable releases, there are like a dozen. And so then from their full releases, it's like 60 or 70 movies.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there were sub-labels like Moonbeam and Torchlight and Monster
Well, see,
Island.
I don't count any of that stuff.
But those were all
I just
sub.
count
but even
Full Moon
but
Pictures.
above that, in Full Moon Pictures and Full Moon Features and Full Moon Entertainment, which they're all the same thing, they had a ton of movies. So,
They do have Re-Animator.
but a lot of them were sequels. So that's that, like Witch House 2, Witch House 3, Killjoy 2, that kind of good stuff. Puppet Master: The Legacy.
So the this guy that made this movie, the director, I think he directed the movie Robot Jocks, which was
Yeah.
very influential on
I
my
think Barbara
middle
Crampton
school.
was in Robot Jocks too.
Wow,
Maybe.
I liked that movie.
Yeah. That movie is good.
That could do with a reboot. That would be a great reboot.
It was called Pacific Rim.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Except it didn't have the chainsaw penis.
Yeah.
So yeah, From Beyond, Stuart Gordon's. It's available on Blu-ray or DVD. It's also on Amazon streaming. I would say go check it out. I would say it's got a 50-50 review for definitely check it out and maybe check it out. Right?
No, just know what you're getting into. Check it out, but know
Check it out, y'all.
Know that you might need friends around to laugh at it.
I laughed at it all on my own.
With my hands down my pants.
Yeah, I was like, oh, my pineal gland. That was my favorite. After watching it with my buddy, we'd be like, oh, and then put a finger to our forehead and wiggle it around. Pretty great. Fun, weird stuff.
Yeah.
It's out of control. You've got to turn it off. Something's coming. What the hell is that? I'm going.
To such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Years ago, the
So what do we got cooking next week? Our last of the
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap
more
up
scary
More
stuff.
Scarier with the future of horror.
Ooh.
Experiential media.
What kind of reality are we talking about?
We're talking. We're going to put on a headset and stimulate our pineal glands to see a world beyond our world, virtual world. With Jules's pick, virtual reality horror. From Beyond. So yeah, I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Yoho or on Snapchat at NotDeadJohn. Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me on Snapchat as Dead John and on Tumblr at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
And on Twitter at humans are such easy prey. .humans.
And I'm Julian Cage. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Beautiful Jules. How about you, Giaco?
And I am Giaco Farino. You can find me on all social media by that, at Giaco Farino. And you can check out my writing at my portfolio page, which is clippings.me/Giaco Farino.
Cool. And we'll put links to everyone's contact information and your info and info about From Beyond on our website, newdewshow.com. We'll also be accessible, and if you want to find out more news about the show as they release, on Twitter at newdewshow, so follow us there. What else? You can leave reviews and ratings on iTunes. That would be swell if you could. Also share the show around. Not only are there recommendations for people within the show, but you should recommend the show to people if you like it.
We don't advertise.
We don't
because
advertise.
We wouldn't even know who to pay to do that.
That's right. We advertise by word of our mouths.
That's right. So use your mouths words.
Gang, it may not be new, but maybe it was new to you.
Pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
with him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate entities.